Masoud, how are you?
How are you? Good afternoon.
It's so good to see you again, even though you're in England and I'm in Boston. But
Thanks to Skype, we can talk with each other and see each other more often than we.
exactly. And I want to do a brief video. There's so much going on in the world with ISIS, Daesh, so huge refugee crisis, etc. I added your story of 20 years to the new edition of my book, Combating, and of course we've done a few interviews before that's on. Oh, thank you. Uh,
Yeah,
and I want to also plug
thank you.
your latest book, Destructive and
And
Terrorist Cults, a new kind of slavery, leaders, followers, and mind manipulation. And Masoud, so you were involved with a group for 20 years. Can you just say a few words about that and how you've come to have such a passion to help with this terrorist threat?
I was member of Mujahideen Khalq or People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran. They were established 1965 and with ideology, mixed ideology of Islam and Marxism.
Mm-hmm.
They started as a guerrilla organization to fight against imperialism and Shah's dictatorship. Later, after revolution, they changed into a political group, and then they metamorphed into a terrorist group. And eventually, in 1984, Masoud Rajavi, the leader of the group, announced his marriage with the wife of his close friends, Mariam, and they started a process within the organization called ideological revolution, which mainly was another name for brainwashing and mind manipulation.
Right, and to cut to the chase, you wound up for 20 years
Yeah.
recruiting and being involved with this group, and you even sacrificed your marriage and your children
Yes.
out of total indoctrination. And but you left, thank
Yeah.
God, and you found your way eventually to my work
Yeah.
and learning about mind control. And for the last few years, have been giving speeches and written books about this subject. Tell us what you think the governments, leaders of the world, if they're going to watch this, what are they missing, and what needs to happen?
I think what they're missing to understand that all terrorist groups to survive, they have to change into some sort of cult. They have to use some sort of mind manipulation, brainwashing, undue influence method, whatever you like to call it. Otherwise, they cannot change normal people into a suicide bomber or a terrorist. There is no way. I mean, why I believe that these terrorist groups have to change into cult is because they have to cut or they have to force their members to stand against all their ethical, cultural, knowing things. I mean,
You were in graduate school for mathematics, if I
yeah, exactly.
remember.
Yeah, exactly. I was in final years of my PhD in mathematics and chemical engineering. I didn't have, I mean, I had logical mind. I
Yeah,
had,
you weren't a weak,
no,
person.
not at all.
And
Not
you,
at all. And if you look at the members of Daesh or Al Qaeda, you can find many people who are who have been graduated from universities, even
right,
European universities.
right,
They are
intelligent, educated people.
exactly from different families. I mean, poor families, rich families, middle class families. So you cannot say that the poverty, for example, is the reason why people are joining Daesh or Al Qaeda, or you cannot say lack of education is the reason.
Right.
Uh,
So we could talk forever, but I want to cut to the chase.
Yeah.
What do you think? I mean, and I'll also add my thoughts. But what is not being done that needs to be done urgently in terms of this, the war against terror, the war against ISIS, the refugees that are fleeing Syria? What are your recommendations? What needs to change?
I think first the media attitude in the West has to be changed towards terrorist organizations. They have to realize that while they are talking about Islam, their ideology has nothing to do with Islam. As a
Right,
matter of fact, when you are recruited by these groups, they hardly talk about ideology.
right.
They, their appearances might be different, and probably some people think that this is Islamic or Muslims dress like this or behave like this, but it is nothing to do with Islam.
And in fact, there's only, I think, official report I read was 11% of all terrorist acts are Muslim, even Muslim related. In
Yeah,
other words, the big picture of terrorist cults is the mind control piece
exactly.
and the
Nothing
cult
to.
piece.
Yeah, of course they use ideology. I mean, all
Right,
different cults, they use some sort of ideology to
right,
recruit and to glue members to each other. But what is important for them is behavior
right,
rather than theology or religion.
right.
Behavior of the members are very important, and they want to control the behavior of the members
Right.
rather
So we
than.
need to educate the media, the general public needs to be aware instead of blaming the victims and calling the members of these groups evil people and sociopathic. They need to see them as people who have been brainwashed and mind controlled into this totalistic
Yeah.
identity.
I feel that media, I mean, established media or old media,
Mm-hmm.
these days, instead of being a part of the solution of terrorism, I am afraid they are part of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
By calling these groups Muslim, by calling this group Islamist or jihadist, and so on. So, what they do, they will put these terrorist groups beside 1.6 billion Muslims.
Right.
They will allow them to recruit from this huge pool of the young people.
Right.
While if they call them Daesh and they say that they are not nothing to do with Islam and is just a process of brainwashing or mind manipulation, then they will isolate them.
Right.
You know,
Right. So I totally agree with you, and also just saying so much about the terrorist people and glorifying them, but condemning them to death, just makes them martyrs. As we've discussed in previous interviews, it's confirming what the cults want
yeah,
the rest of the world to do. But wouldn't you agree with me that we need to empower more former members with money, with resources to speak out about this group, and not just how the Quran is being misused, but really explaining the nuts and bolts
yes.
of isolation and sleep deprivation and phobia indoctrination and thought stopping techniques, all the rudiments that I
Yeah.
write about in my work.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the interviews of some of those who have left Daesh, in their interviews, you cannot find anything about theological education of these groups. Whatever you can see is behavior of the people while they are over there. They will force them to behead others or watch them. So why? Why? Because they want to isolate these people not only from the wider society, but also from the culture and ethical behavior of the rest of the people.
Right.
Even they want to cut them from the history. You can see that many of these suicide bombers have exploited themselves inside of the mosques. So even they do not recognize traditional mosque as a holy place, as a place of sanctuary, that no weapon should be used inside of it, and so on.
Right.
So it's mostly about behavior and the leader of the group.
The totalist, right?
Yeah.
So what would you say about all the people who are coming from Syria, from leaving Iraq, coming to Europe, coming to other countries of the world? Isn't that a vulnerability that wouldn't Daesh want to be infiltrating through these refugees to create more terrorists? situation?
Yes, that is my worry. I mean, I understand that European countries should sympathize with all these refugees, and I can understand their suffering. But at the same time, I am worried that these terrorist groups can infiltrate within these refugees and can come to European countries and recruit
Exactly.
more people.
Exactly. So for me, the point isn't to refuse the people who are suffering and leaving such a horrible situation. For me, there needs to be mass education
Exactly.
programs to these refugees, and of course, helping them get relocated and have food and etc. But they need to be educated about mind control cults, and
Exactly.
they need to be exposed to former members of extremist groups to learn the patterns so
Yeah.
that they won't be vulnerable to these groups recruiting them. Wouldn't you
Yeah.
think?
Yes, and unfortunately, if you look at what has been produced by the media or government about this issue, about this problem, you hardly can see they are talking about mind manipulation or brainwashing. They talk about ideology, they talk about Islam, they talk about
Right.
internet, whatever, but nothing about how these people have changed, how
Right.
these people will change suddenly from who they were into a terrorist person or a suicide bomber.
Right.
And yeah,
Exactly. And so, as you know, I've been helping people since I got out of my own extremist group 39 years ago. I've been, as a mental health professional, helping people to understand what happened to them, to help them get the therapy they need, to understand how they were systematically broken down and how a new identity was created that suppressed their real identity. And unfortunately, even though I've been doing my work for so long and I've been on all the top television shows, etc., there's still a fundamental huge gap with mental health professionals even to understand this is actually in the DSM-5, the American Psychiatric Association Diagnostic Manual. It's 300.15, brainwashing by cults. It's a dissociative disorder, but there's a total missing gap or gap in people's education and training on how to address this problem and how to do therapy properly with these people. So we're doing this video because I want to let people know that there's a battery of us former members who want to help and
yes,
who can be very persuasive to
yeah,
help educate the public in general, to help people who have been radicalized to de-radicalize and speak out against the cult, which I think is huge, and to also do more inoculation going forward.
yeah.
So I want to point people to your books, and we'll put your website and your Facebook page up at the end of this interview, and we'll direct people to our terrorism page on Freedom of Mind and my Facebook page. And all I can say is, if you're a former member listening to this, please speak up.
Yes,
And we need to destigmatize the fact that the public still thinks if you were in a cult, there's something wrong with you. The more intelligent, the more successful you are. If you're a celebrity, if you speak out and say, yes, I have been deceived and manipulated and mind controlled, and now I'm out and I'm okay.
yeah.
It's such a huge thing. Any last words you wanna?
Yes, Steve, if you look at the media, you can see a lot of news about horrible acts of these groups.
Yeah.
But there is no interpretation of that. Why Daesh is beheading people in front of others, why they are destroying the ancient sites, why they explode themselves in a mosque. There is no explanation. While you and I understand fully that this is part of the isolating members from outside world, mentally and physically. I mean,
Exactly.
by forcing people to behead others, they dehumanize the outsiders.
Right.
So they isolate their members. They will create new family, new emotion for them. They do not consider their old family as family anymore.
Right. As I
You
didn't.
Yes, we understand these things
Right.
and we can explain what they are doing. But unfortunately, you can see the news that they behead somebody or the news that they destroyed an ancient sites and so on without any explaining. So people think that they are horrible groups. Yes, they are horrible groups, but what they are doing is rational. They know what they are doing. They know exactly what they are doing and what do they want to achieve. To isolate their members totally from outside world, prepare themselves, prepare them to do anything for the group and for the
Yeah,
leader.
to isolate them from their pre-cult self, their authentic self, because their authentic self would never behead somebody or
Exactly.
destroy
Ex-
something. So it's
exactly.
an internal cognitive dissonance
Yeah.
goal as well. I couldn't agree with you more. We're going to do this again
Oh,
soon, and I want to thank you for your
thank you very
courage.
much.
And I guess I also want to say that,
And best of
yeah,
luck
I
with
want
your
to emphasize the point is that psychology has advanced to a very high level of how the mind works and how to manipulate people, and that the key to human rights and the key to our future is understanding how the mind works and inoculating people to understand how unethical influence or undue influence is employed to brainwash and mind control people to become obedient slaves,
yes.
and to be captured by a story about the world ending, the apocalypse happening, and we're going to create the new world order for God. No matter it's a Christian cult or a Jewish cult or a Muslim cult or a Hindu cult or an atheist cult, this story is dangerous. We need to protect our planet, look at other human beings as our brothers and sisters, and take care of one another, because this is life and it's precious.
Yes, exactly. I mean, Daesh and Al Qaeda, they are some sort of disease, and if we don't find a cure for this disease, unfortunately, uh, we cannot control it.
Right.
And by bombing them and killing them like that, you never can destroy a disease. Disease needs a cure.
Couldn't agree more. It's like a virus, and
Yes.
we need to have a vaccination, and we need to have a shot that
Yes, exactly.
and hopefully we can do that together, Masoud.
Okay,
It's an
hopefully.
honor.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much for calling. Yes,
Okay.
hopefully see
See
you
you.
soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.